The massive doors of the throne room crashed open with enough force to crack the ancient stone frame. Princess Kalara stormed through, her battle armor smoking and sparking from a dozen different damage points. Behind her, guards scrambled to keep up, their faces pale with fear. "Where is he?" Her voice echoed through the vast chamber like thunder. The assembled nobles and courtiers pressed themselves against the walls, trying to become invisible. Nobody wanted to be the target of the warrior princess's rage. The human mechanic, Jake Morrison, stood calmly near the royal armor stand, his tools neatly arranged on a portable workbench. He was the only person in the room who didn't flinch when Kalara's furious gaze swept over him. His dark hair was tied back, revealing a face marked by grease smudges and the confident expression of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. "Your Highness," Jake said, giving a slight bow that somehow managed to be both respectful and completely unimpressed by her dramatic entrance. "Right on time. I just finished the final adjustments." Kalara's golden eyes blazed with fury as she marched toward him. Each step left scorch marks on the pristine marble floor. Her armor, once the pride of the Zalarian Empire, now looked like it had been through a meat grinder. Entire plates were missing, others hung by single connectors, and the power core flickered erratically. "You!" She pointed an armored finger at Jake, the servo motors whining in protest. "You told me this armor was combat-ready. You said it could handle anything the Vronak could throw at it." Jake didn't step back. Instead, he pulled out a small scanner and ran it over her damaged armor, making thoughtful humming sounds. "Interesting. Looks like you encountered their new plasma cannons. The ones intelligence said they wouldn't have for another 3 months. They had an entire battalion equipped with them." Kalara's voice rose to a roar. The stained glass windows high above trembled. "My strike team was nearly wiped out. We barely escaped with our lives." "But you did escape," Jake observed, still studying his scanner readings. "And you're here, alive and very angry, which means the armor did its job." The throne room fell silent. Even the ever-present hum of the palace's energy shields seemed to pause. Nobody spoke to Princess Kalara like that, especially not when she was in one of her legendary rages. Kalara's hand moved to her plasma blade, but the weapon only sparked pathetically. Another system failure. Her jaw clenched so hard that everyone could hear her teeth grinding. "My armor failed," she snarled. In the middle of combat, systems started shutting down one by one. My targeting array went dark. My shields collapsed. I had to fight my way out using nothing but backup power and raw determination. Jake nodded, completely unfazed by the princess, towering over him in her 7-foot-tall powered armor. "That's because you exceeded the operational parameters I specifically outlined. Let me guess. You diverted shield power to weapons, pushed the reactor past redline, and ignored at least 3 critical heat warnings. I was trying to save my soldiers. And you did," Jake said simply. "The armor held together long enough for you to complete an impossible tactical retreat under fire. Any other armor would have suffered complete cascade failure and left you dead on the battlefield." He walked over to his workbench and picked up a datapad. "I've been monitoring the telemetry data from your suit. You pushed it to 347% of recommended operational capacity. The fact that you're standing here yelling at me instead of being scraped off some Vronak battlefield is a testament to the upgrades I installed." Kalara's rage seemed to falter for a moment, confusion flickering across her features. "Ew, you were monitoring my armor?" "Of course I was," Jake said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "How else would I know what improvements to make? Your combat style is unique. You treat power armor like it's an extension of your own body rather than a vehicle. Most pilots would have ejected when the primary system started failing. You stayed in and fought." The princess stood frozen, processing this information. Around them, the nobles and guards remained silent, watching this unprecedented exchange between their fierce warrior princess and the strange human mechanic. "You knew I would push it past its limits," she said slowly. Jake shrugged. "You're Princess Kalara Voss of the Zalarian Empire. Your entire military record is nothing but impossible victories achieved by doing exactly what nobody expects. Of course you were going to push past the limits. That's why I built in redundancies on top of redundancies. He gestured to her damaged armor. Primary shields failed, but the secondary ablative layer held. Main power went down, but the distributed backup cells kept your life support and basic mobility online. The targeting array crashed, but the manual override systems I installed last month gave you enough functionality to fight your way out. Kalara stared at him, her anger gradually transforming into something else. You planned for my recklessness. I planned for your heroism, Jay corrected. There's a difference. Now, are you going to let me show you what I've been working on? Or would you prefer to continue shouting at me? Because honestly, Your Highness, we both know you're not really angry at me. The throne room held its collective breath. Challenging the princess's emotions was even more dangerous than challenging her combat skills. I'm angry at the Vronak, Kalara admitted after a long pause. I'm angry that I lost 3 good soldiers today. I'm angry that those plasma cannons caught us by surprise. Then, let's do something about it, Jake said, walking over to the armor stand where a newly modified suit waited. I've been working on this ever since the first reports of Vronak weapon development came in. I want to see what human engineering can really do. Kalara's eyes fixed on the new armor. It looked similar to her damaged suit, but with subtle differences, additional plating here, modified joint structures there, and a power core that glowed with a different, more intense light. What did you do to it? Jake's grin was decidedly predatory. I fixed your armor, Your Highness. But, more than that, I made it worthy of you. This isn't just protection. It's a weapon that matches your fighting spirit. The princess moved closer, her anger finally giving way to interest. Explain. Reactive armor plating that learns from each hit and adapts its defense patterns. Neural link controls that predict your movements and enhance them. A power core based on human zero-point energy technology that essentially gives you unlimited operational time. And he paused for dramatic effect. Shields that can withstand point-blank plasma cannon fire while you're running at full combat speed. Kalara circled the armor slowly, examining every detail. This is impossible. The power requirements alone would be impossible using Zalarian technology, Jake agreed. But humans have been fighting bigger, stronger enemies for our entire history. We've gotten very good at evening the odds through engineering. Why? The question came out before Kalara could stop it. Why put so much effort into my armor? You could have made a fortune selling this technology to the highest bidder. Jake met her gaze steadily. Because I've watched you fight, Your Highness. I've seen how you put yourself between danger and your people every single time. The galaxy needs warriors like you. And warriors like you need equipment that won't let them down. He picked up a plasma welder from his bench. Plus, I really hate being told something can't be done. The Vronak think their new weapons make them invincible? Let's prove them wrong. Kalara stood silent for a long moment, studying both the armor and the human who had created it. The throne room remained frozen, waiting for her response. Finally, she spoke. How long until it's ready? It's ready now, Jake said. I finished the final calibrations just before you arrived. All it needs is a pilot who's crazy enough to push it to its limits. A smile, the first anyone had seen from the princess in months, tugged at the corner of Kalara's mouth. Show me everything. Every system, every upgrade, every advantage this armor gives me. The Vronak think they've won a victory today. Tomorrow, I'll show them how wrong they are. Jake's answering grin was infectiously confident. Now you're talking my language, Your Highness. Let's get you suited up and run through the systems. By the time I'm done explaining everything, you'll be ready to take on their entire fleet single-handed. As the princess began removing her damaged armor with Jake's assistance, the tension in the throne room finally broke. Nobles began whispering among themselves. Guards relaxed their grips on their weapons, and servants scurried about their duties. But in the center of it all, a human mechanic and a Zalarian warrior princess worked together, preparing for a battle that would shift the balance of power in the galaxy. The Vronak had made a critical error. They had given Jake Morrison a reason to push human engineering to its absolute limits. And they had given Princess Kalara a weapon that finally matched her unstoppable will. The War Council assembled at dawn, filling the Strategic Command Center with the Empire's finest military minds. Holographic displays showed the devastating aftermath of yesterday's ambush. 3 Zalarian warriors lost, an entire patrol route compromised, and the Vronak growing bolder with each passing hour. Admiral Theron stood at the central display, his weathered face grave. The Vronak have fortified their position here. He pointed to a canyon system on the border. Their plasma cannons have a clear field of fire across the only approach route. Any assault would be suicide. Then we go around, suggested General Crix, his 4 arms gesturing at alternative routes. Circle through the Deadlands, attack from behind. That would take 3 weeks, another commander protested. By then, they'll have dug in even deeper. Princess Kalara stood at the back of the room, silent in her new armor. The suit hummed with barely contained power, its surface seeming to drink in the light around it. Jake Morrison stood beside her, tablet in hand, monitoring the armor systems as they ran through their initial combat synchronization. Your Highness, Admiral Theron turned to her. What are your thoughts on the situation? Kalara stepped forward, and the assembled officers instinctively made room. The new armor moved with a fluid grace that her previous suit had never achieved, each step perfectly balanced despite the massive weight. I think you're all thinking like traditional military commanders, she said calmly. The Vronak expect that. They're counting on it. What do you suggest? Theron asked, though his expression suggested he already suspected the answer. I go in alone. The war room erupted in protests. Officers shouted over each other, voices rising in disbelief and alarm. Through it all, Kalara remained perfectly still, waiting for the chaos to subside. Your Highness, General Crix said carefully, with all respect, that's exactly what they want. They'll focus all their firepower on a single target dash. Yes, Kalara interrupted. They will. And while they're doing that, committing all their resources to killing me. Our strike teams can hit their supply lines here, here, and here. She touched the holographic map, highlighting vulnerable positions. Jake, show them the armor's capabilities. The human mechanic connected his tablet to the main display. Technical readouts flooded the screen, power outputs, defensive ratings, operational parameters that made the officer's eyes widen. This armor can take sustained plasma cannon fire for approximately 47 minutes at full combat speed, Jake explained. The reactive plating actually gets stronger under sustained attack, learning and adapting to incoming fire patterns. But more importantly, he pulled up a new display showing a complex energy signature. The armor broadcasts a very specific electromagnetic profile. To Vronak's sensors, Princess Kalara won't look like a single warrior. She'll look like an entire armored division. Stunned silence greeted this revelation. You want to use her as bait, Admiral Theron said slowly. I want to use their overconfidence against them, Kalara corrected. They think their new weapons make them invincible. When they see what they believe is our main assault force, they'll commit everything to destroying it. They won't realize it's a deception until our real forces have already crippled their support structure. It's still incredibly dangerous, Crix protested. If something goes wrong, then I'll improvise, Kalara said simply. Jake, are you confident in the armor's capabilities? The human nodded without hesitation. I stake my reputation on it, Your Highness. This armor will keep you alive and fighting no matter what they throw at you. Your reputation? One of the younger officers scoffed. What does a human mechanic know about Zalarian combat? Jake's expression didn't change, but Kalara noticed the slight tightening around his eyes. Before he could respond, she spoke. This human mechanic has kept me alive through 17 major engagements. His modifications have turned standard Zalarian armor into something our enemies fear. If Jake Morrison says the armor will hold, then it will hold. The endorsement carried weight. Officers who had been skeptical now looked at Jake with new interest. I'll need real-time telemetry, Jake said, addressing the War Council. I'll be monitoring the armor's performance and making adjustments on the fly. This isn't just about the hardware. It's about adapting to whatever surprises the Vronak might have. Admiral Theron studied the tactical display for long moments. If we do this, we commit fully. No half measures. Strike teams in position before the princess begins her approach. Complete communication blackout to prevent the Vronak from detecting our real forces. I can provide that, Jake offered. The armor has a quantum entanglement communicator, completely undetectable by conventional means. The princess and I will be able to coordinate with you regardless of jamming or interference. You, Crix frowned. You're not going into the field. I'll be in the forward observation post, Jake said firmly. Close enough to provide support, far enough to avoid combat. Someone needs to monitor the armor's performance in real combat conditions. Kalara turned to look at him, something unreadable in her expression. That position will be within range of their cannons if they detect you. Then, I'll have to make sure they don't detect me, Jake replied with a slight smile. Besides, Your Highness, someone needs to document this for the history books. The day Princess Kalara took on an entire Vronak battalion single-handedly. You're very confident in your creation, she observed. I'm confident in the pilot, Jake corrected. The armor is just a tool. It's the warrior inside that makes the difference. Admiral Theron made his decision. We proceed with the princess's plan. Strike teams mobilize immediately. We launch at sunset when the canyon shadows will provide additional cover. He turned to Kalara. Your Highness, may the ancestors guide your steps. The ancestors can watch, Kalara said, flexing her armored fists. I have more practical guides. She glanced at Jake. Final systems check? Jake pulled up his diagnostics, fingers flying across the tablet. Power core operating at optimal efficiency. Reactive armor primed, and learning mode engaged. Shield generators showing green across the board. Neural link synchronization at 97% and climbing. He looked up. Your armor is ready for war, princess. The war council dispersed to prepare their forces, leaving Kalara and Jake alone in the command center. The princess studied the holographic canyon, memorizing every detail of the terrain she would soon be fighting across. You didn't have to defend me, Jake said quietly. To the council, I mean. Yes, I did, Kalara replied without looking away from the display. They need to understand that human engineering isn't something to be dismissed. Your people's technology might be the edge we need to win this war. Is that the only reason? She turned to face him, the armor's helmet retracting to reveal her face. You've never asked me for anything, Jake. No favors, no special treatment, no attempts to curry political influence. You just fix things. Make them better. Do you know how rare that is in the royal court? Jake shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. I'm an engineer. Making things work better is literally my job description. No, Kalara said softly. Your job was to maintain the royal armor. Everything else, the upgrades, the improvements, the countless hours spent analyzing my combat data to predict what I'd need, that was you going beyond any job description. She paused, then added, when this is over, we need to discuss integrating more human technology into our military. Your people's approach to warfare is different, creative. We could learn from it. Assuming we survive the next few hours, Jake said with dark humor. We'll survive, Kalara said with absolute certainty. You built this armor to match my fighting style. Now I need to fight in a way that matches what you built. Show me the advanced systems again. I want to understand every capability before I face the Vronak. They spent the remaining hours going through every system, every function, every possibility the armor provided. Jake explained the theory behind each modification while Kalara translated it into practical combat applications. They worked with an easy synchronization, engineer and warrior finding common ground in the pursuit of perfection. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the palace grounds, alarm bells rang out. The strike teams were in position. The operation was about to begin. Kalara stood, the armor responding instantly to her movements. Time to see if your faith in human engineering is justified. It's not faith, Jake said, gathering his equipment. It's science. I'll be monitoring everything from the observation post. If anything goes wrong, nothing will go wrong, Kalara interrupted. You've given me the tools I need. Now watch what a Zalarian warrior can do when properly equipped. She strode from the command center, each step radiating confidence and controlled power. Jake watched her go, then hurried to his own position. In a few hours, they would either change the course of the war or become another casualty in the long conflict with the Vronak. But, as Jake set up his monitoring station, watching Kalara's armor signatures light up his screens, he felt no doubt. He had built the perfect armor for the perfect warrior. Now it was time to prove it. The Vronak commanders never expected a single warrior to walk into their killing field. Princess Kalara emerged from the canyon shadows as the last rays of sunlight painted the rocks in shades of blood and gold. Her armor caught the dying light, seeming to burn with an inner fire as she strode purposefully toward the heavily fortified Vronak position. Contact! The Vronak sensor operator's voice crackled through their command network. Massive energy signature approaching from the south. Reading as this can't be right. Computer shows at least 30 heavy armor units. Commander Vrax leaned over the sensor display, his scaled face twisting in confusion. 30 units, moving in perfect synchronization. Run diagnostics. I have visual confirmation, another Vronak reported. But I'm only seeing one target. Through his monitor at the observation post, Jake watched Kalara's approach while tracking the Vronak communications he'd managed to hack. They're taking the bait, he murmured into his quantum communicator. Sensor spoofing is working perfectly. They can't figure out what they're seeing. Understood. Kalara's voice came back calm and focused. How many cannons are tracking me? All of them, Jake reported, fingers flying across his keyboards as he analyzed the data streams. They're committing their entire defensive battery. Strike teams, you are clear to begin your approach. In the Vronak command bunker, chaos reigned. Vrax stared at the lone figure walking toward them, then at his sensors showing an entire assault force. It's a trick, he decided. Some kind of holographic projection hiding their real numbers. All cannons, prepare to fire. Maximum dispersion pattern. We'll blanket the entire approach and see what's really there. Kalara saw the plasma cannons swiveling toward her, dozens of barrels glowing with building energy. She took a deep breath, feeling the armor's neural link syncing with her thoughts. Jake, she said quietly, I hope your shields are as good as you promised. Better, came the immediate response. Remember, the reactive armor needs to analyze the first few hits. Don't dodge the initial volley. Don't dodge, Kalara repeated with dark humor. My combat instructors would have your head for that advice. Your combat instructors never met a human engineer. The Vronak cannons fired. The canyon lit up like a star going nova. Dozens of plasma bolts screamed through the air, each one capable of vaporizing a standard armored vehicle. They converged on Kalara's position in a display of firepower that would have annihilated a conventional assault force. The impacts were catastrophic. The ground around Kalara turned to glass, rocks vaporized, and the air itself seemed to burn. But when the initial barrage cleared, she still stood. The armor glowed white-hot, energy cascading across its surface in mesmerizing patterns. But it held. More than held. It seemed to be drinking in the energy, processing it, learning from it. Impossible, commandait Vrax breted. First volley absorbed, Jake reported, his voice tight with concentration. Reactive armor is adapting. Neural link holding steady. How do you feel, princess? Angry, Kalara replied, and began to run. She moved within human speed, the armor amplifying her natural athleticism into something terrifying. Plasma bolts rained down around her, but now she was dodging, weaving between shots with precognitive grace. The armor learned from each near miss, predicting firing patterns and feeding information directly to her consciousness. Strike Team Alpha in position. Admiral Theron's voice crackled through the quantum communicator. Beginning assault on Supply Depot. Strike Team Beta moving on the ammunition reserves, another voice reported. The Vronak were too focused on Kalara to notice their rear positions coming under attack. Commander Vrax screamed orders, demanding more firepower, faster targeting, anything to bring down the impossible warrior bearing down on them. She's still coming, a gunner reported, fear creeping into his voice. Nothing stopping her. Kalara reached the base of the Vronak fortifications and jumped. The armor's enhanced muscles launched her impossibly high, carrying her up and over the first defensive wall. She landed among a squad of Vronak soldiers who barely had time to scream before she was upon them. The princess had always been a formidable warrior. With Jake's armor amplifying her every move, she became something out of legend. Her fist shattered Vronak battle armor like paper. Energy blasts from her integrated weapons carved through defensive positions. She moved like flowing death, unstoppable and terrifying. Pull back to secondary positions, Vrax ordered, but half his communications were already being jammed by explosions from the strike team attacks. Jake monitored everything from his post, making micro-adjustments to the armor systems in real time. Power spike in Sector 7. Compensating. Princess, massive heat buildup on your right. That gun's overcharging for a kill shot. Kalara spun without thinking, trusting Jake's warning. A plasma bolt that would have cored through even her enhanced armor screamed past, missing by inches. She returned fire, her armor's weapons guided by Jake's targeting data, and the threatening cannon exploded. Supply depot destroyed. Strike Team Alpha reported. Ammunition reserves are burning. Beta Team confirmed. The Vronak rear is in full retreat. But in the fortification, the battle had become personal. Commander Vrax, realizing his position was lost, had activated his personal combat armor, a massive, brutal thing designed for close-quarters destruction. "You think you've won?" he roared, charging at Kalara with claws extended. "I'll tear you apart myself." The two warriors collided with the force of a thunderclap. Vrax was larger, stronger, with generations of Vronak military engineering in his armor. But Kalara had something he didn't. "Jake," she grunted, grappling with the massive commander. "I need more power to the left arm." Rerouting from secondary systems, Jake responded instantly. "You've got 15 seconds of enhanced strength before I need to rebalance." Kalara used those 15 seconds to perfection. Her empowered left arm caught Vrax's claw strike, holding it immobile while her right fist drove into his armor's midsection. The Vronak commander's armor cracked, systems failing under the tremendous impact. "Ow!" Vrax gasped, stumbling back. "What kind of armor is this?" "Human engineering," Kalara said simply, and hit him again. The battle turned into a systematic dismantling. Every time Vrax tried to attack, the armor had already adapted to counter him. Every weakness he tried to exploit had been anticipated and reinforced. Jake's voice in her ear provided constant updates, warnings, and adjustments, making her untouchable. Finally, Vrax fell, his armor sparking and ruined. Around them, the Vronak forces were in full retreat, caught between Kalara's unstoppable assault and the strike teams hitting their support positions. "All Vronak forces withdrawing," Admiral Theron reported. "The border is secure." "Princess, are you injured?" Kalara stood among the wreckage of the Vronak fortification, her armor scarred but intact. "Negative, Admiral." Jake's armor performed beyond all expectations. "Get out of there, Princess," Jake urged. "I'm reading Vronak reinforcements moving in from the north." "You've done enough." But Kalara wasn't finished. She walked to the main Vronak communication array, still partially functional, and activated it. Her image would broadcast to every Vronak receiver in the sector. "I am Princess Kalara of the Zalarian Empire," she announced, her armor gleaming despite the battle damage. "Today, one warrior walked through your strongest defenses. One warrior broke your most powerful weapons. This armor was built by human hands, designed by human minds. Consider what an army equipped with such technology could do." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "The Zalarian Empire offers you a choice. Peace with honor and mutual respect, or war against an alliance of Zalarian warriors and human innovation. Choose wisely." She destroyed the array with a casual backhand and began walking back through the ruins of the battlefield. The surviving Vronak forces parted before her, too shaken to even consider attacking. An hour later, she walked into the forward command post where Jake waited. He immediately began scanning the armor, checking for damage, verifying system integrity. "That broadcast wasn't part of the plan," he said, not looking up from his diagnostics. Neither was the armor being this effective, Kalara replied. You undersold your creation, Jake. It didn't just protect me. It made me unstoppable. You made yourself unstoppable, Jake corrected. The armor just kept up with you. He finally looked at her, relief clear in his eyes. When Vrax charged you, I thought. You thought I'd lose? I thought you'd do something stupidly heroic that would overload the systems. He showed her his tablet, covered in amber warnings. You pushed the armor to 412% capacity during that fight. By all rights, it should have failed. But it didn't. No, Jake agreed with a small smile. It didn't. Turns out I'm better at this than I thought. Kalara removed her helmet, shaking out her sweat-dampened hair. The Vronak will sue for peace now. After today's demonstration, they'll have no choice. You've changed the balance of power in this sector, Jake Morrison. We changed it, Jake said firmly. I just built the tool. You wielded it. Admiral Theron's voice interrupted them through the communicator. Princess, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Vronak High Command. They're requesting immediate peace negotiations. Kalara shared a look with Jake. Tell them we'll meet in 3 days. That should give Mr. Morrison enough time to repair and upgrade the armor. I want them to see it in perfect condition when we negotiate. 3 days. Jake protested. The armor took weeks to build. Then, you'd better get started, Kalara said with a slight smile. Unless human engineering isn't up to the challenge. Jake's expression shifted to one of determined confidence. 3 days it is. But I'm going to need access to the palace workshops. All of them. Done. Anything else? Dinner, Jake said unexpectedly. You haven't eaten in 18 hours, and I need to pick your brain about the armor's performance while it's still fresh. We can go over the combat data together. Kalara blinked, surprised by the practical concern. You're worried about me eating? I'm worried about my test pilot maintaining peak performance, Jake corrected, but there was warmth in his voice. The armor is only as good as the warrior inside it, remember? As they walked back to the transport, side by side, the sun finally set completely. But the darkness held no fear now. The Vronak had learned what happened when human innovation met Zalarian courage. And in the palace throne room, when word of the victory arrived, no one questioned why the human mechanic stood at the princess's right hand during the celebration. He had earned his place through genius, dedication, and an armor that had shaken the foundations of galactic warfare. So, Kalara said quietly as the celebration continued around them. What improvements are you planning for the next version? Jake's grin was pure human audacity. Your Highness, I'm just getting started. Wait until you see what I can do with proper funding and resources. The princess laughed, a sound that made the entire throne room take notice. Then, the galaxy had better prepare itself. A human mechanic with unlimited resources? That might be more dangerous than any weapon. Only for our enemies, Jake assured her. Only for our enemies. And in that moment, as warrior and engineer stood together in the throne room where their partnership had truly begun, the future of the Zalarian Empire took on a distinctly human flavor. The age of innovation had arrived, wrapped in armor, and delivered at the speed of war. The Vronak never stood a chance.